Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video, although we are going to be talking about Destiny 3 today, namely because Destiny 3 was trending on Twitter for pretty much 24 hours yesterday, not with like a bazillion tweets, but enough for me to notice it and for it to keep popping up into my suggested topics feed there. This came as a result of the news on Thursday that Bungie would be vaulting the Tangled Shore, and we got into our annual content vaulting debates about it sucks, it's necessary, stop complaining, keep complaining, what are the fixes here? And so Destiny 3 was brought up. Why was Destiny 3 brought up? That was something I had to kind of figure out in the first place. And it seems to be that the kind of argument being made was that if Bungie is going to just keep cutting stuff from Destiny 2, that they might as well just stop doing that, leave Destiny 2 intact, and then move on to making Destiny 3. The weird thing is like, we are kind of getting into a ship of Theseus situation here, where to quote WandaVision and or ancient Greek mythology or whatever this was, the analogy is that if there's an ancient ship that you replace each plank to like repair it and then put a new plank in, once all the planks are replaced, is it still the ship of Theseus? Destiny is on its way to becoming its own ship of Theseus, given that what we started with, Destiny 2 Vanilla, is all gone essentially. Like, the story components are all gone. We still have some year one stuff like the Tower and EDZ and Nessus, and we know those are sticking around. So we haven't fully replaced all the planks yet, and yet we are like 80% new content, I would say, since that launch. But then now, even some of the new content, like Forsaken, is being vaulted too. So there's two kind of debates here, like the perception of what's happening and then the reality of what's happening and like potential fixes for it. The reality of what's happening is Destiny 3 is not a thing until, at the very minimum, I would say next console generation. We already know that Destiny 2 is getting 3 expansions that have not come out yet. It is getting the Witch Queen this winter, 2022, and then if we're going back to a yearly schedule, where I assume one of these will come out each winter, Lightfall 2023, and then the Final Shape 2024. Not only that, but Bungie has specifically said that, well, that will be the end of the Light and Dark saga. Destiny 2 will continue expanding from there. They specifically said Destiny 2, not Destiny the franchise. They said Destiny 2. So let's say that is another trilogy of expansions. So that's 2025, 2026, 2027. At that point, we are clearly getting to the end of the console generation. And then, whatever PCs are upgraded to by then, 5080s or whatever cards we're at by then. But it seems pretty clear to me the reality of what's happening is Bungie wants to keep working on Destiny 2 itself and continually upgrading the core game as it exists now. You can debate whether or not that's a good thing, given the limits that might run into, given that we just spent an entire previous generation with Destiny 2 essentially. But that is the reality of what's happening, and that can't really be changed. I'm not even sure in concept I like this idea. The alternative suggested, I think, is that we just kind of put Destiny 2 down and then Bungie makes an entirely new game. But that creates the same issues that we had going from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, where we just cut, all of that and just put it away in its own content vault, essentially, where we had to start over from scratch at baseline. And that came with a whole host of other problems. People didn't really like everything from Destiny 1 going away, and then, things slowly being trickled back out, whether at first it was weapons, and now we're trickling out Destiny 1 zones again, things like that. In theory, at least, a Destiny 3 would be another hard stop, and then we would just get 4 new planets and a new base story campaign, and we would leave all the stuff we've had behind. I don't necessarily know that Bungie, when Bungie does do a, quote, true sequel to Destiny, that it'll even take that form, given that we're talking about something that's like 5 or 6 years away. It seems possible that by that point they may have developed something where they can make it more of a continuous thing, as opposed to, like, they can develop Destiny 3 with the idea of like carrying through Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 content, as opposed to just cutting everything over again and starting from scratch. That seems very antithetical to, oh hello Evie, to exactly what they've been doing over the past few years now since they've been free of Activision. The idea of a hard stop sequel is very much an Activision idea, where we can see this with Overwatch 2 now. Activision wants sequels. They want box copies they can sell. They want people to be forced to buy something. And while Destiny's seasonal content may have its issues, it's $10 every 3 to 6 months for the most part, or, a $40, $50 expansion every year. So that is almost a game in and of itself, and yet it is not, you're not losing the level of things you would be losing for a true sequel. All of this said, I still understand why there is so much pushback about the content vault. This is another thing, oh, there goes my light, where this is another thing where it's kind of reality versus perception, and like what we can change versus what we actually can't change at all. So Destiny 3 not happening until at least, in the next generation, we cannot change content vaulting. Bungie is not going to stop content vaulting because they have made it abundantly clear that the reason they are content vaulting is something that we cannot really understand as players. I still see the narrative being passed around that I probably have said in the past, but not before I really kind of got what was happening, that I don't care how big the file size is, I just want everything, or maybe we could just have things separate, you could just have an optional download and blah blah blah. But it has become very clear that the work they've done on the technical side is that's not the point. It is part of it, and they have mentioned the size, but that's not the point. The point is all these kind of fundamental behind the scenes back-end reworks that they have done, to the point where when they talk about they are bringing 2 Crucible maps from D2 out of the content vault, and you're only 2? Why don't they just bring 8 out? And they pretty much said they have to rebuild those maps essentially from scratch within their new engine. And I think they have done that with a lot of the content that is currently in the game that was not vaulted. They had to rebuild a ton of stuff kind of behind the scenes, and the stuff that was vaulted was not able to have that done. So it is a more technically intensive thing than the game is getting too big and there are too many activities to manage. That's part of it, but that is not the core reason, and that is not why it will keep happening. The core reason is that Bungie essentially has to do this. They have gotten themselves in a situation that is pretty unique, because almost no other games do this, but the technical side of it is that they are forced to do this, and we have to deal with it. If you don't want to play Destiny anymore because of it, that's a risk they're running, but that's just the way it is. That said, I think, so in terms of tangible potential solutions here, if the solution is not stop content vaulting, I made this point yesterday where I think that I really want to see them start bringing stuff out of the Destiny 2 content vault. So we already know that the content vault is, in theory, this big pool of Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 stuff. And Bungie has remade a bunch of Destiny 1 stuff to put in the game: Cosmodrome, some strikes, some Crucible maps, and Vault of Glass. That's great. Most of that has been fine, maybe not from a story perspective, but it has been fine as gameplay stuff. But what I want to see is kind of the best of Destiny 2 vaulted content come back. And we have seen literally nothing come back since this started. Granted, we're not that far into the content vault. It only really started with Beyond Light. And yet I think it would be a very clear symbol that okay, maybe this isn't as catastrophic as we thought, because this stuff is coming back someday. And a big argument is we paid for this content, and it sucks that it is literally unavailable. That is borderline class action lawsuit territory, where I think you could make that case. Honestly, I don't think we sign some sort of license that Destiny can just delete stuff you paid for whenever it wants and it's inaccessible. But a solution to that is to prove that this is not necessarily permanent. And so well, I don't need Mercury and its singular public event back, or the Curse of Osiris campaign to return. I would love for them to pick a selection of really good vaulted Destiny 2 stuff and scrub it up and do the engine upgrades and bring it back. I made a suggestion yesterday that if Bungie is expanding, if Bungie has extra roles and cash to throw around, maybe they can outsource this. Maybe just converting existing Destiny 2 content to the upgraded Destiny 2 engine could be the job of a studio that doesn't need to do creative stuff and can just do the technical labor required to make that happen. So you can take your pick of favorite vaulted D2 stuff to come back. I would bring back Mars. I think that was a good story campaign, had good strikes, had an escalation protocol, was a good zone. I would love all of that to come back. I would love for certain things to be extracted from what was vaulted, including a lot of the exotic missions. I would love for especially 0 Hour and Presage to come back. I mean, Presage isn't even gone yet, but it's about to be. That seems to me like that would be relatively easy, well, quote unquote, easy to do compared to bringing an entire zone back, because those are kind of self-contained instances rather than like the Whisper mission is integrated into IO. So maybe that would be harder because IO is a whole zone and like Whisper was inside of it technically, and maybe that's more complicated. But stuff like that, I would hope to see. Other personal favorites, I think we need something like the Tribute Hall back. Just literally give us the Tribute Hall back. That would be great. And then obviously the one everyone always brings up is Menagerie. It would be great if Menagerie would return and have updated loot and be another kind of potential core activity to farm again. But like, I'm not saying literally everything that has ever gone away needs to return. But it does seem like they need to start at least announcing or talking about bringing stuff that they have vaulted from Destiny 2 back out of the vault, because it originally seemed like the idea was to just give stuff a good once over and then bring it back. But the only stuff they have brought back is Destiny 1 stuff, and then we are just starting to see this with the two Destiny 2 Crucible maps that were vaulted that are coming back. I don't think we know which ones those are yet, but that will be the first time that something comes out of the Destiny 2 vault. And again, I just listed probably 5 or 6 expansions we still have, so there is plenty of time. And again, we are not even a year after Beyond Light yet, are we? No, wait, I can't remember. Anyway, we're not that far away from Beyond Light. Time has lost all meaning during the pandemic, so I can't think anymore. But I believe that this would kind of be less of a big deal if we started to see Bungie picking and choosing some of the best stuff to bring out of the content vault that was not just Destiny 1 stuff. And because honestly, we're getting kind of low on Destiny 1 stuff to bring back. There's like 2.5 more raids, I guess. There's, my guess is they're probably going to bring back Wrath of the Machine if I had to guess. But, there's some strikes. But like, I would not focus on bringing Destiny 1 Mars back over Destiny 2 Mars, for instance. Like, I think it would be much more productive to bring Destiny 2 Mars back for many reasons. So things like that. That is what I'm hoping to see as a potential solution for content vaulting and further proof that we don't need Destiny 3 if they can, or at least we don't need it for a long time, if they have to take stuff away, at least bring it back once they have upgraded it. And we just haven't seen that so far, and I do think this would require maybe a bigger team and more labor than they have right now, because obviously everyone is working on new content. They want to prioritize new content because that is more important than bringing old stuff back. I very much agree with the sentiment that for, a lot of people, they're sunsetting the Forsaken campaign, which is the best campaign. Obviously, I haven't played the Forsaken story missions in like 3 years, so, there's no personal point for me of that going away. And yet I do think it does a disservice to the game as a whole, especially to new players when stuff like that is cut. And I think the game really lost something, especially when they cut the entire Red War campaign, which served as a really, pretty solid introduction to the game, and it was a very clear path of what you were supposed to do at first. Now the game has nothing. It has Shah Han's quest, and that's it. That's really the only thing. And then you kind of just jump into a random assortment of expansions and seasonal stuff. It needs more order back, and that may require bringing back some of the vaulted Destiny 2 stuff. But that's a whole other debate for another day, the new player experience. So this is just kind of my thoughts on all this Destiny 3 talk, and that it is not remotely plausible or realistic to expect Destiny 3 anytime, I would say, before the very end of this console generation, if not the beginning of the next one. So that's where we're at. It is not ideal in many ways, and yet we kind of have to deal with the reality of it and then maybe suggest things that can work within that reality. So that's what I've ended up as. Evie, are you snoozing? You want to say goodbye? No? Okay. All right. Talk to you guys later. Good to see you.